This happened when I was 27. At the time, I'd just moved to rural northern Oregon after landing a remote tech job. Rent in Portland was ridiculous, so I posted in a few housing forums looking for shared accommodation. That's how I ended up in a 2-story farmhouse with 3 other guys, strangers, but all in their mid to late 20s like me. The house sat on a quiet gravel road surrounded by thick pine forest. It had a creaky wooden porch, a rusting wind vane, and an attic none of us really used. We split the rent 4 ways, and though we weren't close, it worked out. That is, until it didn't. About 8 months in, 2 of the roommates, Jared and Leo, suddenly moved out. One got a job in Seattle. The other said his girlfriend was pregnant. That left just me and Caleb, the one guy I barely talked to. Caleb was odd, tall, quiet, always wearing long sleeves no matter the weather. He worked part-time at a gas station and mostly kept to himself. We agreed to ride out the remaining 3 months of the lease and then go our separate ways. But after Jared and Leo left, things got strange. Fast. During the day, the house felt like a ghost town. I worked from home and rarely saw Caleb. Evenings were worse. He'd leave at weird hours, sometimes disappearing for entire nights despite only working mornings. I assumed he had a girlfriend or friends he never mentioned, but something felt off. Then came the night that changed everything. It was close to 1:30 a.m. on a rainy Thursday. I was lying in bed, scrolling on my phone, when I saw headlights sweep across my window. A few seconds later, I heard the front door creak open and slam shut. I figured it was Caleb. On impulse, maybe out of awkward politeness, I opened my bedroom door to say hey. But as soon as I did, I heard fast, heavy footsteps pounding down the hall toward his room. When I peeked out, Caleb froze mid-step, one hand on his door. The hallway light was off, but in the dim glow of my bedside lamp behind me, I could see his face, wide eyes locked on me, like a deer caught in headlights. "Yo, Caleb," I said, trying to sound casual. "Everything good?" He didn't say anything for a moment. Then without blinking, he muttered, "Fine," and shut the door. I stood there for a second, the silence suffocating. Something about his face, his expression, it wasn't embarrassment. It was more like I'd interrupted something secret. Curiosity got the better of me. A few minutes later, I crept out again and tiptoed past his room. I just wanted to listen. That's it. But inside his room, I heard frantic movement, drawers slamming, objects shifting. The erratic noise sent chills crawling down my spine. Then, dead silence. I held my breath. Suddenly, his door swung open. Caleb stood there again, his eyes the same, wide, restless, glassy. He didn't speak. He didn't even flinch when he saw me standing there. I was going to the kitchen," I stammered. "You want anything?" "No," he said softly, and shut the door again. I went to the kitchen just to make it believable, but my hands were shaking as I poured a glass of water. That night, I locked my door and pushed a chair against it. For the next week, I barely slept. Every night, I'd stay up until I heard Caleb come home, listening to his slow footsteps creep past my room. He never turned on the lights. He barely spoke, and his eyes, they got worse. Bloodshot, twitchy, like he hadn't slept in days, like he was waiting for something. Then, the knock came. It was almost 2 a.m. I'd just turned off my light, ready to try sleeping despite the unease that constantly gripped me. That's when I heard it. 3 soft knocks on my door. I froze. I hadn't heard footsteps approach. Nothing. Just the knock. I opened the door a crack. Caleb stood there, holding something in his hand. His smile was wrong, crooked, forced. "Hey man," he said. "Think I dropped my wallet outside. You got a flashlight?" I hesitated. He never asked for anything, not once. Still, something told me that saying no might be worse. So I grabbed the flashlight and followed him out into the damp, chilly night. The gravel crunched under our shoes as we walked. The woods around us were pitch black and breathing. Caleb made small talk, asking about my work, if I liked living here, if I had family nearby. I noticed his car was parked way down the driveway, nearly to the tree line. We got there, and I scanned the ground. No wallet. Then he said, "Might have dropped it during a walk earlier. Maybe out there." He pointed to the woods. I stopped. "You were walking in the woods?" He nodded, motioning for me to follow. I took one step in and immediately regretted it. The trees were dense, and the beam from my flashlight barely reached 10 feet ahead. The further we went, the quieter it got. "Why are we even out here?" I finally asked. He paused. "I thought I saw something out here earlier, like someone watching me." That's when I felt it, that icy primal panic. Something wasn't right. "I think I'm gonna head back," I said. "Early morning meeting." I held out the flashlight. Caleb didn't take it. His smile dropped. His expression twisted into something dark and cold. "You sure?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, backing away. He just stood there, staring at me, unmoving. I turned and walked briskly, flashlight bouncing wildly. I didn't look back again until I reached the house. He wasn't following, but he didn't come back that night either. Inside, I packed everything I could. I didn't care if it was 3 a.m. I needed out. I stayed up until dawn, clutching a pocket knife, listening for footsteps. Nothing. When the sun rose, I bolted, loaded my essentials into my car, and drove off. I didn't leave a note. I didn't cancel the lease. I didn't care. I never heard from Caleb again. I checked with the gas station. He hadn't shown up since. No forwarding address. No trace. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd followed him deeper into the woods that night. Whatever it was, he was ready for it. And I think I was supposed to be his last roommate. In 2023, I was 29 and living in a rented 2-bedroom house in the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina. Tucked between dense woods and a winding country road, the house felt isolated, even during the day. I shared it with my former college roommate, Eli. We weren't particularly close, but after graduation, we both needed a cheap place to live. Splitting rent just made sense. We'd lived together for over a year with no real issues. By the time we renewed the lease in April, we were on decent terms. Not best friends, but respectful roommates. That changed in June. I'd worked late one Thursday night. The office was nearly 40 minutes away, so I didn't get home until just past 11:30 p.m. Eli was in the living room when I arrived, quietly scrolling through his phone. We chatted for a bit, nothing important, then both turned in. At 3:07 a.m., I woke up. The house was dead silent, except for a slow creaking, floorboards moaning just outside my room, moving down the hallway. I assumed it was Eli getting water or pacing from insomnia. The floors always made noise when someone walked across them. I glanced at my alarm clock glowing dimly on the nightstand, sighed, and rolled over to sleep. The next morning, I was running late for a client meeting, scrambling to leave when Eli stepped out of his room, eyes half closed. "You were up last night?" he asked groggily. "What?" I blinked. "You mean, like, Walking around? Yeah. I thought I heard someone outside my door at like 3. I stopped. Number. I thought that was you. We both just stared at each other. Neither of us had been up, yet we'd both heard footsteps. I chalked it up to old pipes or settling wood. The house was built in the 60s, and the recent storms had stirred things up. Still, the coincidence left me unsettled. That night, Eli had a late shift, so I had the house to myself. I microwaved a frozen dinner, watched a horror movie I'd seen a dozen times, and tried not to think about the floorboards. Around 2:45 a.m., I crawled into bed. The rain was back, light tapping on the windows and wind rustling the trees. I left a small lamp on. I don't usually, but something felt off. At exactly 3:01 a.m., it started again. Slow creaks in the hallway. One step, then another, drawing closer to my door. I held my breath. They passed my room and kept going, toward the living room. Then silence. I waited 10 minutes before working up the nerve to get up. I grabbed a small baseball bat from beside my bed, left over from college days, and walked into the hallway. The living room was empty. The windows were locked. The front door still chained shut. I stood there for a while, listening. Nothing. The next morning, I told Eli. He didn't laugh, which surprised me. He looked genuinely worried. Do you think someone's been getting in? I don't know how, I said. Everything's locked. He checked the doors and windows anyway. Nothing seemed out of place. Still, the idea of someone being in the house while we slept haunted both of us. That Friday, I worked a late client dinner and didn't get home until nearly midnight. As I walked down the hallway to my room, I glanced into Eli's bedroom. The door was open, and he was sitting on the edge of his bed, facing the corner. Hey, I called out. He didn't respond, didn't move. I figured he had headphones in, so I went to change clothes. 10 minutes later, I came back out to grab a snack from the kitchen. I noticed Eli's light was now off, but he was still sitting there. I leaned into the doorway. Eli, I asked. No answer. He just sat in the dark, perfectly still, staring into the corner of the room. My skin prickled. Hey man, you okay? Nothing. I backed away and went to the kitchen, unsure of what I was supposed to do. He wasn't hurting anyone. Maybe he was having a rough night. Maybe he was sleepwalking. 15 minutes later, I walked past his room again. The door was now shut. I didn't sleep well. Around 4 a.m., I heard the creaking again, but slower this time, more deliberate. I watched a faint shadow shift beneath the crack of my door. I didn't move. I just stared. This time, instead of opening the door, I texted Eli. Are you walking around right now? His reply came a minute later. No, I'm still at Kelsey's. What's going on? My heart stopped. I leapt from my bed and opened the door. The hallway was empty, but Eli's door was open again. I crept toward it. Every hair on my body was on end. I peeked inside. There was a man standing in the center of the room. He was tall, broader than Eli, with a thick beard and long, oily hair. His face was partially shadowed, but I could see his eyes, wide, fixed. He was watching me. I slammed the door and bolted outside into the night rain, not even bothering with shoes. I sprinted to the end of the gravel driveway and called 911 with shaking fingers. The sheriff arrived in under 10 minutes. When they searched the house, it was empty. No signs of forced entry. Nothing stolen. Just a partially open bedroom window. The deputy didn't look surprised. Happens more than you'd think out here, he muttered. Some folks just like slipping in and watching. I felt sick. What chilled me most wasn't just that he had been inside, but that he'd been waiting, watching, learning our patterns. And that night, it was Eli's first evening away since the lease renewal. I never stayed another night. I grabbed my essentials the next morning and moved in with my sister, 2 towns over. Eli broke the lease shortly after. We never really talked about it again. To this day, I don't know who that man was or how long he'd been coming inside, but I'll never forget the way he looked at me, like I was next. In the autumn of 2021, I was 30 and had just moved back to Milwaukee after several difficult years. I needed a reset, emotionally, financially, everything. I found a modest apartment on the 3rd floor of an old brick building on the east side. It was close to the lake, had creaky hardwood floors, and smelled faintly of dust and damp wood. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, or it would be, once I found someone to help with rent. I posted an ad online, no longer Craigslist, but a local housing board. I specified that I was looking for a female roommate, preferably around my age, someone quiet, respectful, working, or in school. Within 2 days, I got a message from someone named Lena. Her message was polite, friendly, and articulate. She said she was 29, taking night classes at UW Milwaukee, and had just moved to the city. She didn't use social media, but offered to meet in person. She seemed eager, though not desperate. I agreed to let her stop by the next day. Lena arrived precisely at 2 p.m. She wore a faded gray coat, carried a leather messenger bag, and had dark auburn hair that fell nearly to her waist. She didn't look 29. If anything, she looked older, not in a weathered way, just composed. Something about her posture, her tone, calm, measured. We talked for about 20 minutes. She liked the apartment, complimented the view, and didn't flinch when I brought up the shared bathroom or the questionable radiator. She said she had no pets, no loud friends, and wouldn't be around during the day. It sounded perfect. She moved in that weekend. For the first few days, things were quiet, almost too quiet. Our schedules barely overlapped. I worked mornings at a local cafe and did freelance writing in the evenings. She left just before dusk, came home sometime after midnight, and rarely left her room during the day. Still, she was polite, kept the common areas clean, and always paid her share on time. But then, the shadows started. On the 5th night, I came home around 9:30 p.m. after closing at the cafe. As I opened the front door, I heard hurried footsteps rushing down the hallway, and a door slammed shut. I assumed Lena had just gotten home and didn't want to chat, which was fine. But when I looked down the hallway, her door was shut, the light was on, and mine, my bedroom door, was open. I always closed it before leaving. I stepped inside cautiously. Nothing looked disturbed, nothing was missing, but the air felt wrong, like something had been there that didn't belong. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe I'd just forgotten to close the door. Maybe Lena had knocked, and it swung open. Still, I locked my door that night. Around midnight, as I sat watching TV with the lights off, I noticed something beneath the door. A shadow, not moving, not shifting, just present. "Lena," I called softly. Nothing. I stood, walked over, and opened the door quickly. The hallway was empty. Then, just as I stepped out to look around, I heard her door shut again, quietly this time. My heart pounded in my chest. I tried to convince myself she was checking on something, maybe confused my door for hers. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that. It felt intentional, like she wanted me to see the shadow, wanted me to feel watched. The next morning, She was in the kitchen, sipping tea and scrolling through what looked like a paperback with no cover. I asked casually, "Hey, were you outside my door last night?" She looked up with a faint smile. "No," she said. "Why?" "Just thought I heard something." She smiled again, but didn't respond. I left it alone. That night, I came home a little after 10. The apartment was dark. Lena's door was shut, the hallway still. I entered my room, changed into pajamas, and got in the shower to wash off the day. The water hissed loudly in the small tiled bathroom. Halfway through, I thought I heard a click, soft and quick, like a door latch. I paused the water and listened. Silence. I resumed my shower, finished up quickly, and stepped back into my room. The door was slightly ajar. I knew, without a doubt, I had locked it. A deep unease washed over me. I got dressed quickly, scanned the room. Nothing was missing, but it felt colder, like someone had just left, like they'd been standing right there. I locked the door again, this time with my back pressed against it, just to be sure. I tried watching a show, but couldn't concentrate. My eyes kept flicking to the corners of the room, to the dark sliver under the closet door. Around 2 a.m., I finally dozed off. When I opened my eyes, it felt like I hadn't slept at all. I sat up, disoriented. The room was pitch black, the apartment silent. But the door was open again, just barely, an inch, maybe two. I stared at it for what felt like hours. Then I saw it, a figure, standing near the wardrobe, still, silent, watching. "Lena?" I whispered. The figure didn't move. My voice cracked. "What are you doing?" Still nothing. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, but knocked it off in my panic. The sound echoed. The figure stepped forward. One slow, deliberate step. I saw her face then. Pale, blank, eyes like glass. Her mouth didn't move, but I swear I heard a whisper. Not a word, just the hiss of air. Then she turned and ran. Not walked. Ran. Across the room and out the door. I heard her bedroom door slam seconds later. I sat there, heart pounding, unsure if I'd imagined it. But I knew I hadn't. I grabbed my keys and phone, shoved on my sneakers, and left. I drove for half an hour without direction. Eventually I parked in a grocery store lot and called the police, not to report a crime, but just to ask for a wellness check. I couldn't go back alone. They met me at the apartment just after 4 a.m. I followed them up, breath catching with every step. But Lena was gone. Her room was empty. Not just empty, scrubbed clean. No bag, no books, no clothes, nothing. As if she had never lived there. We found a few strange things. A broken picture frame hidden behind the radiator. A single earring under my pillow. But otherwise, it was like she had vanished. When I gave the police her info, name, number, even the lease application, they hit a dead end. The number was disconnected. The name didn't match any ID records. The lease form had been filled out in pen. No attachments, no backup references. Lena never existed, at least not legally. I moved out the following week. I still have dreams about that night, about the whisper, the blank stare, the stillness. I wake up gasping sometimes, convinced she's behind the door again, watching, waiting. What haunts me most isn't that she vanished. It's that she didn't seem surprised when I caught her. It felt like it was all part of something I wasn't supposed to survive long enough to understand.